Okay, so in the last video we were talking about the individual who made a bracelet which he thought would give somebody some special energy that would make them stronger and better balanced and all of these things. And when it was subjected to double-blind experiment, it was found to not really make a difference at all. So, here's the thing. The experiments that the guy was doing, that were not genuine experiments, when he was just muscle testing people, he thought that that was a real experiment, but it really wasn't. Remember what we just read, and this just defines it so well. It talks about fair trial by actual experiment and thorough investigation with a knowledge of the principles involved in the action. So this guy, he's doing these experiments, but he doesn't have a knowledge of the principles involved in the action. He doesn't really know why sometimes the person's arm will fall more easily and sometimes it's harder. He doesn't recognize the effect of the placebo that's happening, and he's not recognizing the ideomotor effect where he is actually holding his body differently, making the arm move differently. You know, he's not realizing those things. He's not aware of the principles involved in the action. Also, he's not aware of the principles involved in whether it's even possible that holding this bracelet would have an impact on someone's so-called energy. In fact, the reality of it is that this so-called energy that many people think exists, they call it different things, chi, prana, or whatever. There's so many different names. Some sort of life force, or there's a few other names that people give to it. People have had different conceptions of what this is supposed to be. This fine substance or energy field, vibrational frequencies. There's these sorts of names that you hear, and many people believe that this sort of thing exists, where there's this energy all around us, flowing through us, all throughout the universe, and it's just ready for us to harness. Well, you know what? That has never been demonstrated by experiment, which means that nobody knows anything about that supposed energy. And in fact, the claim of that energy as to what it is, ultimately, it's defined to be so fine that it's not really a material thing. It's not really material energy. It's not actually physical. So it's kind of going into a non-physical or spiritual realm. Okay, so you're trying to influence someone's energy without even demonstrating that such an energy even exists. And then, by some physical object that you have within a bracelet, that's supposed to somehow impact that energy. But how? What's the mechanism? How does that happen? Does the person have any knowledge as to how that is, or is it just a mystery even to them? And if it's a mystery to them, how do they really know it's working? So this happens far too often, where people engage in something, they even make products, believe in their products, sell their products, thinking that they're benefiting people, when they're really not. And I think it's very important for each one watching this video to examine yourself to see whether you have engaged in that sort of activity by promoting something without having a genuine knowledge, and with the purpose of helping someone, but perhaps you're not. Or perhaps you've just accepted that sort of thing yourself. Accepted, whatever, whether it be a bracelet or whether it be some other health product or whatever it may be. Have you ended up accepting those things without having an experimental knowledge? I know that I have. I know that there have been certain health products which I have purchased in the past without me really checking into it. But I figure, oh, it's natural, it's got to be good for you. No, it really wasn't. And it wasn't actually quote-unquote natural either, but we need to do experiment. We can't just accept something because someone makes a claim and they label it with something that fits in our paradigm. If we happen to like natural things, and then someone makes something that's supposedly natural and supposed to do all this good stuff for you, well, you might end up doing it just because of that. And that's not a good reason. In order to really know, you need to gain an experimental knowledge. So that's what I'm really trying to advocate in these videos and apply it to all aspects of life. This isn't supposed to be taken and just applied in one place or in another place and that's it. No, we're supposed to change our whole way of thinking to be able to truly learn. Otherwise, we're just going to go through life believing whatever because of our upbringing or because of social things or whatever it may be. But that's not going to take us to the truth, and we need the truth. It's when we go away from truth that we start to act a little bit crazy. In fact, when our mental picture does not correspond or does not match the real physical world, that's really what insanity is, ultimately. Now, we all do it to a certain extent. When someone has that to a dramatic extent, where their mental picture is really way off from what's really happening in the physical world, that's when people end up in an insane asylum and places like that. It shows us the importance of having our mental picture match the real physical world. And how do we do that? We need to have knowledge of the real physical world. And how do we get that knowledge? Genuine experiment. We have to gain this experimental knowledge. That is experience. Okay. Moving on. Experience which is opposed to natural law, which is in conflict with the unchangeable principles of nature, is not to be relied upon. I'll say yes, absolutely, I agree to that 100%. If you have an experience which is opposed to natural law, you can determine and you can find out, okay, these are the natural laws, and if my experience conflicts with that, how can you rely on that? You know, if you experience something but it's actually impossible according to the laws of nature, then isn't it a lot more likely that your experience was not a genuine experience? You may have thought that it was a certain way, but it probably wasn't that way. You know, if it's against the laws of nature, against the principles of nature, then no, it couldn't have happened like that. It really couldn't have. Now, that's not to say that there couldn't be things that happen that are surprising. There could be surprising things. There could be things that are really remarkable, just amazing things that happen that might actually conflict with a contemporary view of the principles of nature. But if it's valid, it won't actually conflict with the laws of nature, with the unchangeable principles of nature. So again, if you have an experience that is in conflict with the principles of nature, don't rely on it. At least question it and experiment. Superstition arising from a diseased imagination is often arrayed in opposition to reason and to scientific principles. Okay, superstition. Now, this is a big thing. A really, really big thing. Often people think of superstition as a thing of the past. But you know what? It's not really a thing of the past. I'll give you a very common, and perhaps this even encompasses the whole thing, but this is a common way or common means by which superstition occurs. It's by confusing correlation with causation. In other words, two things correlate, they happen to take place at the same time or in the same way, and people then jump from that to concluding that one must have caused the other. So an example that anyone can understand is a rain dance. You know, people dancing a certain way, celebrating, and then rain comes. And, you know, this probably started, by the way, with people having celebrations of the harvest seasons. And so they'd have a celebration of the rainy season, and they would just be celebrating it. You know, nothing wrong with being happy for that, you know. Yay, we can eat because the rain has come, so you celebrate. So you end up having your rain and your celebration correlate one to another. They take place at about the same time. Well, then people started to confuse the fact that they correspond or they correlate to causation, and starting to think, oh, well, every time we dance, it rains. So it must be the dancing which causes the rain. And then what happens? Well, there develops this rain dance, and people dance trying to get the rain to fall, and then if it falls, they take that as confirmation that it worked. You know, we knew it. It really worked. And every time where the rain doesn't fall when they did a rain dance, what do people think? Well, we must not have danced well enough. We must not have danced hard enough. Or the gods must be angry at us because we didn't please them well enough. So maybe we need to sacrifice something. Or maybe we need to do a better rain dance, louder, more instruments, more, whatever. I mean, we look at that and we laugh and we think, oh, how foolish can people be? But this happens all the time today. People confuse correspondence or correlation with causation. You may take a sugar pill, not realizing it's a sugar pill. This is placebo. And you take it and you start to feel better. And you think, oh, this must have worked. This must have something in it that made me feel better. Because, hey, before I took this pill, or before I took this herb, or before I took whatever, I wasn't feeling good. I was feeling sick, and then I started taking it, and now I'm better. Hey, that's experience. No, that's just correlation. That doesn't prove causation. That's just like dancing and the rain falls. It's just correlation. You must examine things more carefully and experiment more carefully if you really want to know. So, again, we could give more examples, but I hope that that's enough for you guys to get the idea how we do the same thing. The same thing as people who do a rain dance, and other animals do the same thing as well. There's been experiments that have demonstrated that pigeons can be superstitious. And if you've ever had a hamster or anything like that, you might know that too, where it might develop a certain behavior every time before you feed it, because it thinks that by doing that behavior it's going to get food, when really its behavior had nothing to do with the food. That's a superstitious type of behavior, and that is often arrayed against reason and scientific principles. This is, again, the statement that we are reading. I'll read it again. Superstition arising from a diseased imagination is often arrayed in opposition to reason and scientific principles. I'll give you another example. I know that this is controversial, but I invite you all to look into it and to gain an experimental knowledge. Okay, so homeopathic medicine, homeopathic pills or liquids or whatever it may be. People often will take these medicines and end up thinking, okay, well, this worked because it, before I wasn't feeling good and then I took this and now I'm doing better. Well, is that proof? No, that's just correspondence. But here's the thing. What homeopathy really is, it has a few principles. First is the principle of like heals like. So if you have, and this isn't quite how it's done today, but if you have a problem with your eyes, then you have to take eyes of some animal and use that in your medicine. Or something is, okay, well, this is something that is actually used today still. Okay, well, if you have an itchy rash, well, then what you need in order to heal that is poison ivy. Like heals like. Now that doesn't really make sense, right? And then the next principle is just really extensive dilution. So you dilute it so much. So it's like taking a drop and putting it into a 60-gallon barrel, shaking it up, and then taking a drop of the 60-gallon barrel and putting it in another 60-gallon barrel, shaking it up. Then taking a drop from that 60-gallon barrel and putting it into the next one, shake it up. Get it so diluted to the point where literally there's not even a particle of the original substance there, but it's supposed to keep the energy signature of that original substance. And that is what is supposed to be powerful. In fact, the more you dilute it, the more it is supposed to be effective, the more powerful it is supposed to be. That's really the principle. So when scientists come and say, hey, that actually doesn't work scientifically, often people object to that because of the superstitious belief. Anyway, we're going to have to talk more about this later, but I'm going to have to stop the video now because we're coming to the end of our time. So we will continue on in the next video of our series. Farewell.